I came home early. The house was quiet in a way that felt rehearsed. No toys underfoot, no cartoon murmurs bleeding from the living room. Just a note on the table, written in my wife's neat, apologetic hand. We took your son to my parents' house. Don't bother coming. I bothered. Of course I did. The drive felt longer than it was. Every red light a personal insult. I practiced calm, because calm had always been my advantage. When I pulled up, the curtains were drawn like eyelids pretending to sleep. I knocked once, firm, polite. My father-in-law opened the door and smiled like a man who had already won. "You're not on the list," he said. That's when I saw my son through the window, his face pressed to the glass. He held a folded note with both hands, like it might slip away. I read it backward at first, then right. "Dad, I'm okay. I didn't want to come. Mom said you're dangerous. I know that's not true." The hinge screamed when my boot connected. Wood splintered. Gasps followed. I stepped inside, and the house seemed to shrink around the truth. They called the police. I called my lawyer. The thing about betrayal is that it never starts as violence. It starts as revision. They rewrite you until you don't recognize yourself. My wife had been doing it for months. Little corrections to my past, little edits to my tone. I was cold, unstable, too focused. Her parents nodded like they were watching a diagnosis take shape. Once we were a team. Late nights, shared calendars, whispered jokes over a sleeping baby. I built stability. She built stories. I trusted the wrong architecture. I didn't discover the betrayal all at once. It came in receipts that didn't match conversations, school forms I hadn't seen, a restraining order draft saved but not filed, the kind of paperwork people prepare when they're planning a clean cut and want the mess to look accidental. The night I found the draft, I stopped pleading. Pain sharpened into geometry. I measured angles. I counted steps. Planning looks boring from the outside. Inside, it's a cathedral. I hired a private investigator who specialized in family court narratives, the kind that unravel when exposed to daylight. I pulled phone records, location data, email threads forwarded to mom and dad with subject lines like, "He's slipping." I documented the lies not to feel righteous, but to be precise. I moved money quietly, not to hide it, never hide, but to clarify ownership. I updated beneficiaries. I created a trust with rules that couldn't be bent by emotion or manipulated by fear. I set alerts for school portals and medical records. I asked for copies. I made myself impossible to erase. The execution wasn't loud. It never is. The emergency custody hearing happened on a Thursday morning because judges hate weekends. My wife cried at the right times. Her father sat behind her, steady, paternal, confident. I said very little. I let exhibits speak. I let timestamps do their work. I let my son's note sit under the document camera, folded exactly how I'd found it. The judge leaned back. Silence became a tool. "You removed the child without consent," she said, "not to me. You drafted a restraining order based on statements contradicted by your own messages." My father-in-law's smile flickered. My wife's tears dried too fast. By Friday afternoon, temporary custody shifted, supervised visits, mandatory counseling, a warning about future conduct that landed like a verdict preview. They tried to escalate, filed complaints, called my employer, whispered the word dangerous like it was a spell. They didn't know the building they were attacking belonged to a trust I'd set up years ago. Retirement planning, they'd called it quaint. That trust had voting rights. It had patience. "You're outdated. We're done here," my CEO had hissed weeks earlier when the calls started. I'd replied quietly, "Understood." That was the moment the trust activated. By Monday morning, the board convened an emergency meeting. Emails flew. Confusion thickened. Someone asked the wrong question out loud. Who just fired the person who owns 76% of the shares? I didn't attend. I didn't need to. The vote was automatic. The bylaws were merciless. The company announced a leadership transition by noon. By 1, my phone stopped ringing. The fallout was surgical. My wife's attorney withdrew. Her parents stopped answering. The house I kicked my way into felt smaller now. ashamed of itself. The police report ended with no charges filed. The judge scheduled a final hearing and recommended therapy for everyone but my son. At home, I made dinner. Simple food, familiar rhythms. My son sat at the table and talked about school like nothing had happened. That's the miracle of children. They accept safety without demanding explanations. At night, alone, I allowed myself a single inventory of feelings. Anger, yes. Grief, certainly. But no regret. Regret is a luxury for people who confuse mercy with weakness.